welcome to everyone to Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, a conversation circle sponsored by Still Moving Center every Saturday afternoon, where we are really seeking to open everyone up to their own inherent wisdom. So we always give a little starter and look forward to everyone else carrying the conversation for the rest of the session. And this topic for the week is very much a future-oriented topic that also sees that the future lies within our hands in the present. And in order for us to really look into it, we have actually two people who are going to help us out. Cliff has most recently read our speaker's book, and so he's going to act as the questioner. And he's also someone who knows the myth of Prometheus very well. Our topic is Promethean Foresight. Our speaker for today is Tony Bonnici. Tony is a very dear friend going back many years to when his wife and I took the NIA Black Belt together. And a little while afterwards, when I asked Tony to become my business coach, which is something that he is extremely good at, having been a long-time entrepreneur. He's going to be speaking to us from the Zen tradition, which he grew up in. And I'm very delighted to say that both of his parents, who are Zen Roshis, are here with us. So we have a whole bunch of Zen wisdom joining us today, in addition to Bob Buss, who hails from a similar tradition. So without further ado, I'm going to let my husband, Cliff, take it away with Tony Bonnici.
Well, Renee asked me to kind of ask Tony some questions because I've been delving into his wonderful book here, The Dojo. And it seemed to me that one of the big themes in this book is about foresight, or developing vision for one's life and for the world as well. So I said to Renee, if anyone's going to speak on the subject of foresight and vision, I think Tony should do it because I'm reading all about it in this book. So she reached out to Tony, and Tony graciously volunteered to speak on the topic. I'll just briefly share a little bit about Prometheus, if people don't know too much about that myth. So Prometheus, actually Renee named our construction company after Prometheus. So I go around explaining it a lot. Where Prometheus Construction is the name of the company that I run. And so people go, why do you have that name? And I'll just say, well, my wife gave us, I always start with, my wife gave us that name. And then I go from there and just say, it's about being deliberate or being foresightful. And those are qualities that are really important in construction. And I leave it there, but some people go, well, isn't Prometheus from some myth, Greek myth? I think I studied mythology in high school. And then I have to go a little bit deeper into it. And so Prometheus and his brother were the two titans, the two gods that were assigned to give all the attributes to all the different animals on Earth. And they, gave like a protective shell to a turtle, birds' wings to fly, giraffes' long necks to be able to get leagues way up high. But when it came to man, they'd run out. The bag was empty. And so men and human beings were running around kind of aimlessly, not knowing what to do with themselves. And Prometheus took pity on all of us creatures down here on Earth. And so he decided to sneak up to Olympus and steal an ember of fire from the throne of Zeus, the fire of the gods. So he did that, and he put it in a reed, and he took it down to man and gave man this fire from which he was able to develop his crafts and arts and civilization. Eventually, Zeus looked down on Earth and saw that human beings weren't just running around naked, not knowing what to do. And he figured it out that somebody gave him the fire. And then he found out that it was actually Prometheus. He got pretty upset about it, took Prometheus to the top of the Caucasus Mountains, something like that, and chained him to the top of the mountain And then an eagle would come down every morning and eat Prometheus's liver. And then at night, his liver would grow back, and this went on and on and on and on. It turns out, I thought this is actually a fascinating thing I just read in Wikipedia, that the liver was symbolic of the storehouse or place of human emotions. And I think that's interesting, the idea of eating at our emotions. And I think actually Tony's book talks about our emotional nature and how to deal with it. But we've all had that feeling of something eating at us, you know, and that's an uncomfortable feeling, generally speaking. And that's what happened to Prometheus every day. So eventually, Hercules climbed the mountain and released Prometheus. But this myth points to something very deep in many ancient cultures, that unlike Darwinian evolution, a lot of the ancient cultures pointed to this teaching that we human beings aren't who we are just through physical evolution, but our abilities of thinking, choosing, foresight, all these qualities come as a gift from higher beings, from greater beings that lit up our minds. Our minds were lit up by other beings that are greater beings. And this is in many ancient traditions, this idea. And so that's what it's kind of pointing to, is this ability of human beings that we have to choose our path, that we have actual free will. A lot of people debate that everything's destiny, but this is the teaching that human beings actually can create the lives they live in. They can create the world that they live in. And that's a big teaching, I think, in Tony, your book, that we have that power. And so that's kind of the story of Prometheus. So turning to Tony and his book, The Dojo, is the title of the book is The Dojo. In that book, which is a very, very accessible book, it's very practical. It's in many ways a very easy read, but at the same time, it's very, very deep and very, very profound. And it really, to me, it seems, I would call it a compass that helps us navigate our lives. You could use it daily to help one navigate one's lives. And he breaks it down very simply into some very accessible ideas or pictures, really, that you can use to visualize how to make your life better, basically. And he talks first about this idea of the dojo, and the dojo is kind of this realm of practice, this testing ground. He also says in the Sanskrit root of the meaning of the word dojo is seat of wisdom. So it's a place of kind of like where we challenge ourselves, but through this challenging of ourselves, we can gain wisdom. We can gain, gems of wisdom. This dojo has 4 quadrants. It has the quadrant of our work, or what we do with our lives in daily life, the quadrant of family, and that can be expanded, and then the quadrant of the physical, and then the quadrant of the spiritual. These are the quadrants that he breaks the dojo into these 4 sections. And the way I visualize it, on each corner of this mat, if you visualize the dojo as being a square room with a tatami mat or whatever you call them, there's these pillars, these 4 pillars that surround the quadrants. And these pillars he gives character names to. And the first character is the monk. The second character is the sage. The third character is the samurai. And the fourth character is the sensei. And so when you read about these and the qualities that they bring to helping one navigate one's life, it really starts to make a lot of sense, because each one of these characters can enter all 4 of these quadrants and provide a different approach or perspective in each of these quadrants. So the more you think about it, the more you go, am I in the sensei or am I in the monk state? But you can use this over and over again to help one kind of figure one's life out, is the way I see it. anyways, the one that's the most appropriate, I think, to the idea of vision or foresight is the sage. So I imagine he'll spend a little bit of time talking about that quality. But the first question I wanted to ask Tony was that when I walked away from the book, the one word I came up with that is at the essence of the book to me is the word balance. And it seems to me that like a lot of martial traditions teach about balance and how one needs to have balance. And that in many cases, we're not aware that we're living out of balance. So somehow first we have to realize that our lives aren't really balanced before we can gain balance. But it seems like by making an effort to gain balance in these 4 quadrants, that allows us to then be able to visualize and to have foresight, which is the topic of today. But can you say something about balance and the importance of balance in life and how one can develop it and use it as a compass navigational tool?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Cliff. That was wonderful. The description of the book and everything. I appreciate it. Felt good. So balance, you said a lot. Promethean Foresight. I'd like to bring that into the quadrants also that I'd like to offer, that we all have been innately born with that foresight. And if you think back to how far back can you go and remember when you were a little child, when you used to dream or think about things that maybe weren't real or actually happening? For myself, like the idea of flying was one of those things that I used to always like to imagine and visualize, or different places in the world and experiencing that. So that we all have that Promethean foresight. I love that. And to really think that what's it like to bring it to what Cliff is saying, to all 4 of those quadrants: your body, your relationships, your spiritual practice, and your work. And that through actually letting your creativity and your mind actually play in these different areas can stimulate places in your world that you never knew existed, as far as how to develop your personal life or your spiritual practice, and using foresight and vision to actually experience it in the present. So I think balance is a very a key thing with that. And that we all do it already, and it's the reminder that we have that ability, and that it's always accessible at our fingertips. One of the things that a quote in the book is about, that Alice in Wonderland was talking about when she comes to breakfast. Before she comes to breakfast, she has 7 different imaginations, or 7 different visions that she's already lived out and played with in her mind and in her body. And what's it like to be that readily available to foresight and vision from that gut instinct, or that place within inside oneself? And that's where I tie it to the Zen tradition of the training of that listening and deep place within inside myself, that allows me to listen and access that place that will speak to me from a place of vision or creation that may be bigger than I can ever think of. And yeah, I'll pause there. And what comes up for you with that, Cliff?
Well, I guess another question, it's kind of along those lines, as I was really struck by this one story you told in the book about this woman that took one of your trainings, and it kind of scared her a lot. She said the main thing that she was feeling during this training was fear, and a certain uncomfortable thing. And I was wondering about this thing about fear, and what holds us back from moving forward, and being able to let go of certain things to be able to move toward our, I just finished studying Lincoln. He has this phrase of our better angels, so how do we move towards our better selves, or how do we envision our potentiality and then move toward it? It seems like fear is an anchor. Can you say something about that quality or that emotion?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest inhibitors in listening and following that passion and calling. And for me, support, outside support, having a team around you that can really help bring you forward when I come up against those fears and stuff. I have my own coaches and mentors that I work with. And as you start to notice that what I'm listening to in my body and creates fear is not a bad thing. It's actually part of my compass, or what tells me I'm going the right direction. When I listen to that calling, and then the fear comes up, I'm like, oh, this is a good direction to go. Now let's get support or start to talk about it. So it starts to bring it up and bring it more to reality than just an idea or talking about.
Prometheus has had a brother. His name was Epimetheus, and unlike Prometheus, he was the opposite. His name means hindsight. He's the guy that goes, damn it, I should have done it this way, or why did I do that? And I just think that somehow if we can incorporate foresight more into our lives, we'll have a lot less regret. A lot like, we'll be able to kind of see situations before we enter the situations, like either at work or in family life, or even with a stranger, and we'll be able to be more appropriate. We'll be able to I think it's maybe the samurai is the one that is able to just hit the nail on the head, or cut the head off, basically. I don't know what the samurai basically does, but I remember that samurai in the Seven Samurai, the silent one that would just sit there until it was the moment to strike. But it seemed like he was living in this realm of deep meditation and the realm of potential. And then he would be able to act, listen, and know how to act appropriately, which would mean that he would have a lot less mistakes, a lot less regrets.
Yes.
And so I was just wondering about this idea of how foresight can help us, navigate our daily life, how we can use it to prepare ourselves to live each day in a more rich way, I guess.
Yeah, that's by having foresight for myself really is part of a driving force to get out of bed every morning and do what I do. I'm thinking of for the group to pose the question, what is a foresight that you have that you maybe haven't spoken out into the real world or the space that we're in right now? Let it percolate of what would be one that you can speak into this space and see what it brings up in you. Does it bring up fear? Does it bring up and kind of start the question and answer from that place? And Cliff, would you be willing to start us off on that of foresight for yourself in one of those quadrants of relationships, spirituality, work, or your body?
Well, for me, I mean, I think it was Thoreau that said that, it's one thing to carve a statue or paint a painting, but to actually carve the atmosphere through which we live in. So it just is to be a true artist. So it seems like we all can have that artistic ability to be able to say the right thing at the right time, to really be able to sense another person's need, to be appropriate, and the idea of timing along with that. So for me, that's the big challenge, is to be that ready at all times to be as appropriate as possible. So I mean, that to me, one of the things I like to do that's always a challenge is like when I go and buy lunch or something like that, to be able to identify with and speak in some way that lifts up the person that is serving me food. How do I do that? How do I do that in the most, creative way that really honors that other person. So that requires some intuitive foresight, to really be able to enter another person's realm in a kind and caring way. So that's one practical way. I see David's got his hand up. So we're going to open it up now. We're done with our back and forth. So it's a free conversation on the subject of foresight and
yeah,
so
David.
Back and forth and round and round. On my way back from the dancing, I don't know where this came to me, but Tony, you just sort of invited me to throw it into the space. The little voice that occasionally speaks to me said, "What if this is the afterlife?" And I'm not sure where that came from, but it does sort of percolate up for me like, well, what if this is the afterlife? So I'm not sure where that's going. But as you were speaking, I was thinking something that Cliff just reminded me of. Louis Pasteur said, chance favors the prepared mind. And so I think this idea of foresight, of looking ahead so that we're not kind of knocked sideways when the stuff hits the fan, I think relates to this idea of foresight. In the healing traditions in mental health, we have this process of systematic desensitization, of exposing people to things that they fear in little doses that they're capable of handling. And I'm thinking that, from a level state of a healthy state of consciousness, it's the same idea. We just look ahead a little bit and we get ourselves prepared for that next step so that we can step into it with grace and with like openness to be able to embrace whatever comes. That's where I went. So thank you.
Yeah, I like that. It's the mind is super, it's powerful in the creation of the initial vision, David. And then the part that I like to really include is, what does the body feel like when you include that thinking into that? So like, what does it feel like to be living in the afterlife right now in your body? And by having that vision, how would I show up in the world and live my life from that vision of feeling it and thinking it at the same time?
Yeah. Maybe the experiences that we're having this lifetime are the gifts that we take into what we've been calling the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
That it's the experiences of here in this incarnation, in this body, the lessons that we learn from the rough relationships that we have, that these are the gifts that we then take into the spirit world. I think that's where that went. Thank you.
Could see that, yeah.
I've been thinking about this, about visioning, because I'm familiar with the book, and I would like you to talk more about the sage and how you vision, because I think it's very unique and very important. But for me, I just had this conversation with a friend that I'm retired doing what I love to do. And so my vision is, how do I live this present moment with divine love and divine wisdom? And moving forward to surrender, to be able to, sort of what you were saying, Cliff, show up in my fullest and be ready to be available for what I'm being called to do. And sometimes that's saying yes when I'm afraid, which I'm learning to do. And even more so, I did these when I was younger, but all of a sudden they seem like they're big deals. It's like, it's very interesting. So for me, it's surrendering and listening, but I think you're visioning with if living it now. And I'd like you to speak on that, because I think this living what our vision is now, how it's not something in the future, it's something, if I embody it now, how would I be? So I'd like you to speak on that, Tony, because I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, definitely. So if I heard you correctly, your vision is that you're retired, you're wanting to live in the moment and show up fully for each moment. And then what I was talking about with David, about feeling, what's that feel like to do that in the present moment in every situation. So it's not that we're just talking about it, we're actually experiencing the sensation of being present, being fully there in each situation for the person behind the counter or wherever I am. And by practicing it when you're not in those situations, so like when I'm by myself and I'm not in relationship with anybody, can I actually feel and see what it the experience of being connected or in relationship with somebody like you're talking about. And if I can do that without them, then when I get around people, my body's acclimated to it and it happens more naturally, where my body gets activated and I'm connected through the thinking also, but there's an actual body connection. Yeah.
I also, what I think also, it's just not a state of being, but I have visioned about what I want. And if you speak, once you vision it, even if it's where you want to go with your life or a life quest or whatever, how do you do that how do you do that? How do you work with that?
So a life quest of creating something that like a business
A
or
business or a job or school or whatever you want to be when you grow up.
yeah, yes. Well, creating the end result of the thing that I want. And you could go, I do a lot of the times go out 365 days from today, and what would you want or have physically that you can actually describe in a like in a movie scene to somebody else. So the example that I can give would be that in 365 days, I have traveled to Italy with my wife and my 15-year-old son, who's now 16. So that vision of that, and then to see it and then feel the feelings of being actually in Italy and experiencing that in the present moment. Like right now, I'm a little hot stating that vision because I haven't spoke that out loud or said that as a want, and my body's active in it. And now I can say, okay, that's what that feels like. It brings up some fear and it brings up some excitement. So now let's train or practice at it for 1 minute in the morning and feel that experience of, wow, I'm in Italy and I'm standing there with my wife and son. And now I'm going to go out into the world and be around people and connect with people from this place of vision and feeling. Is that more what you're speaking towards?
Yeah, it's almost like or even if it's a job, you want this job. If you start living from that place now, then what do I do next? That's that deep listening that you were talking about. It's like, if I want to get a job, what's my next step? It's not, it is visioning very clearly. It's like you're going to Italy and you're living it, but then you take the next step. Oh, well, today I'm going to look up flights. Not that you look at flights early, you don't, but it's like looking at flights or looking up what you want to do or where you go. And it's getting more detailed in terms of how you would handle that in the life. And I think that part of the visioning that you teach is so different than what we do in our in normal visioning. It's almost like it's still out there. But what you speak about is deep listening with that. And I think that's a really major difference that I see with your visioning.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, think about your question, how do we experience or practice foresight? I think when you're younger, you tend to see or experience two wishes that may or not be very connected to what you're thinking or doing, but seem like a good source of what is valuable, what ought to be done. And so that's probably appropriate when you're younger, the idea of vision, idea of what to commit to. But as you grow older, it seems to me that the foresight is really end up with thinking about karma and cause and effect. You're much more, perhaps much more likely to, because life taught you that. Well, before I say that to somebody, maybe I ought to think that through or rethink that, or before I do that, would be the consequences of doing that. So I would now link foresight to a sensitivity to the consequences of thoughts and actions.
Was there a question in there? Just wanted, I heard the statement, but I just want to make
Well,
sure.
no, you can respond to that. I welcome that. I guess I was just stopping not to talk too long.
Yeah, so when you're younger, that it happens more naturally and fluid. Is that what I was hearing?
Well, it's from so basically intuition is something that drops down into our consciousness.
Mhm.
It really is a glimpse of the wisdom of what I might call sensitivity, what theosophists call Buddhi. And so it comes perhaps as a surprise, just actually it comes from maybe a deep consideration of some idea. Take for example, you're younger, actually thinking about, well, what's this teaching about God? Is there a God? And so you're not walking around focused, intently on it. But you might have general questions that are at work in your in yourself while you're living your life. So intuition can be surprises, but they can be very much a reflection of a question you might have, or about a relationship, something like that. Whereas all I'm trying to say is that you're much more aware and when you get to, your 60s, 70s, that whatever you choose to do have consequences. And so you ought to think the foresight has to do with a sensitivity to possible consequences of your decisions, your actions. So yes, respond to that if you'd like.
I agree with what you're saying. The maturity of aging, and when I'm hearing things that the difference between my gut instinct and my ego self as I get into my 50s, mid 50s, that I'm seeing that how it's different, that I'm smarter or more aware of when the random is coming versus the insights that maybe do answer a question or has wisdom that I wasn't aware of, and I'll actually respond or listen to it. And I'll constantly encourage as you get older, and it seems like things may be slowing down, that the ability to vision and listen deeply is at a heightened level that I would encourage all of you to play with and go into, that you may learn things that you were not aware of if you have this curiosity. So it's definitely different when I'm younger, and as I mature into it, I'm listening differently. And Carolyn, what you're talking about, I'm definitely refining what I'm taking in and responding to.
And along with that, a recognition of the complexity of nature and other people and yourself and the society you live in. So there's a recognition or encounter with complexity and with the diversity of human nature. So, and that's why maybe parents they get worried. They see a child or a friend or whatever launch into something, because they've experiences taught them to be more careful or questioning of their assumptions and their actions.
Yes. wisdom goes a long way.
I like what Einstein said about that. Imagination more important than wisdom. Yeah.
Knowledge.
I was thinking how imagination might be, because children are full of it, right? They're just pure imagination. And it might be that that is the sort of the non-physical aspect of what helps us develop this prefrontal cortex, so that we can have this idea of planning and foresight, that as we're children, we're just pure creativity and imagination. And it maybe is what causing that to develop. You think about children that are very, very creative tend to be the ones who create bigger things in their lifetime. But I had to just take a little side note, because Diana, you said retired, and I'm a big car nut. And I was thinking earlier, this idea of balance, that you're firing on all cylinders, right? If one cylinder is not firing, the whole thing is clunky, right? But when you said retired, I was thinking, well, like a great classic car, you put new tires on it, so it's retired and it's ready to go for another round. So thank you for that new thought about retired.
I'm retired, David, and now I'm ready to go for a new round. But also retired means doing what I love to do. So I do applied energy medicine and I do life coaching, because retired is just really loving what you're doing and choosing to, and consciously choosing to do it. And perhaps that's the vision, is that I'm choosing. And that's kind of, there's a difference between have to or feeling like something like that. So I'm retired. Thanks, David.
And that I hear that is a vision, Mom, not perhaps. This would be like, it's the mind will even want to say it's not really a vision. That's her vision, and she's totally living it 110%.
That's true. I'm living my vision. I always said I'm living my dream. And so that's what I'm doing, is living the dream. And maybe I'm living the afterlife right now too.
I'd love to hear from your dad, Tony.
This is
I'd love to hear from
what
your
do I
dad.
say?
Yeah, I really like the topic today. Number one, with Prometheus, and what Cliff was saying with Prometheus, and then bringing up the dojo and the quadrants and everything. And one of the things that Cliff said that was true to my experience of what I understand foresight to be is the bringing of fire, for human beings. And to me, the fire is in the blending of sensuality and stillness, and that comes into the place from the practice of Zen in the core, in the Na'au, in the Tanden, in the Dantian. And so when I think about foresight, I think about ahead, and usually the aheadness is unknown. So one of the qualities of Zazen or sitting is to sink into that stillness underneath ego self functioning. Ego self functioning has a lot of ideas or figuring or even in imagination that can, project visions for the future and how to go about that. But the way I found for myself that is always intriguing and mysterious to me is how when I rest in the stillness and I understand that being the stillness is my original nature, not something I'm creating through the form of meditation itself. The stillness exists, it's unborn, and it exists, and it's experienced in the center point of gravity. And so when I experience that stillness, what comes up in my immediate experience is a sense of boundless intimacy, limitless interdependency, and vast oneness. So I realize that that stillness exists both in a linear time and a timelessness. just like our lives. Our lives are both in a linear time, and we're also existing in timelessness. We are the timelessness, and we're using linear time. So it's kind of like that. So when I sink into stillness, I realize that experientially that these truths of boundless intimacy, limitless interdependency, and vast oneness exist at the depth of our material physical being in our body, and exist not only in our body at the center point of gravity, but everywhere. So then when I get up, I have a sense of trusting that as I move towards the future. When I move towards the future in that space, I know that I'm not alone. There's a depth that we can trust that unfolds our lives too. There's a depth that we can, that unfolds our life beyond our imagination, but as long as we're being time now and taking care of the business of everyday life, imagining, loving, visioning, but trusting something greater ahead that's beyond all that even. And it's always guided our life, my life, and in a way that is always surprising to me. And it's not that, it's like, even if involuntary thoughts of doubt or inadequacy or whatever comes up, or not knowing where we go, well, we never leave our true home. We're okay. And that true home is that stillness, is that sense of being in boundless intimacy, limitless interdependency, and vast oneness, which also arouses an endless gratitude for being alive in this way. So I don't know if this all comes up in terms of vision, Tony, but it's kind of like, it's like I'm living my vision as the vision continues to unfold. And so I have a sense, like I didn't know I was going to write 2 books on boundless intimacy and peaceful light, but that's just something that kept coming up, and Tony encouraged me to start the first one. And but I never know what's ahead, foresight. But that foresight, I know that if I stay true to now, that future will unfold, and I'll be ready to be there with my whole being, my wholeheartedness, and my core centeredness, and my intellectual intelligence and emotional intelligence lined up, and ready to live my life just like I'm living it right now.
Tony,
Yeah.
you must feel pretty grateful to have a dad like that, huh?
I'm beaming inside, yes.
Well, as your dad was speaking, Tony, I was thinking as he was speaking about the nature of time. And sometimes we feel trapped by time, but the way he was speaking about entering the stillness made me think that we have the ability to take the present and expand it into the future, so that we're living both in the present and what we call the future.
Yes.
In other words, we're creating it. We're out there already in a way
You see my
by
dad
being so
dancing right
still,
now?
by being so still. This
He's
idea of the present, it can be stretched. Is that something that you're driving at?
Yes, that's exactly what the experience is. Exactly. Yeah, it's like we're living in time, linear time, and we don't push away linear time, but we refine how we relate to linear time and how we take care of business in linear time and love in linear time. And at the same time, we're living in a timelessness. It's like being amphibians, it's kind of like we're living at the surface and the depth. We're not pushing away the surface to be in the depth, because the depth is everywhere. It's even in the surface. So we just kind of keep moving in that way, where we're living in a timelessness, which is a richness of being the body of now, the body mind of now. And at the center point of gravity, we sense that in being the body of now, we're being the body of boundless intimacy and limitless interdependency. It's not, we're not alone, and we live in endless gratitude because there's so many interactions that uphold our life. Whether they're non-sentient beings or sentient beings, there's so much we need to be grateful for.
You're a lucky guy, Tony. I wish I had parents like that.
Yeah, well, and I want to piggyback on what he's saying about that again. He's living timelessness and in stillness, and that he. I recognize that my dad has more vision and imagination than most human beings that have vision and imagination, and it's happening at a rate that that is very fast. And that when you have the ability to vision and feel the actual vision, that you can rest in that space and in that stillness at the same time. So I want to say, like, Cliff is living the future in the now, and the stillness is where it comes from. And man, that's a very great description, Dad. Thank you. I'm very excited. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Renee, how about yourself? I'd love to hear what your take is on this.
Well, before I do that, I want to mention that I'd love to hear from Michael. So I don't know if you want to go before or after me, Michael.
Oh no, I'm a fly on the wall. I'm just listening.
Thanks for joining.
But thank you. Yes.
If you want to jump off the wall, please feel free and fly around.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm reflecting on this idea that Prometheus's very name means foresight. And that in the myth, Prometheus, before he steals fire from the gods, knows, because of his foresight, that he's going to be punished terribly for having done that. And he does it anyway, in order to give this marvelous gift of the fire of the mind to mankind, humankind. And then I was listening to you, Tony, saying that how once you have a vision and you start to feel this fear, you go, oh, I'm on the right track. Let me go towards the fear. Well, it must have been a bit fearful, even for a demigod like Prometheus, to realize he was going to be punished so terribly for so long, eons of time. And yet he went toward it. It was like, oh, must be the right thing. This is really going to get under Zeus's skin, because he doesn't want, this divine power of choice and foresight to get to these measly little human beings. Oh, I must be going for the right thing, right? But oh my gosh, that is not the way most of us really usually operate. Oh, this is scary. Now I'm going to do it.
It takes practice.
But I mean, there's this, we're often taught that we get, that fear is a gift that helps warn us of something that could be damaging. So, like, what about that? How do you know when it's the good fear and when it's the meaning, yes, I should do this? And how do you know when it's the fear that means, don't you dare, that's really bad, turn around and go the other way? How do you know?
Great question. I'd like everybody to answer it for themselves of what the difference is, because there's a distinct difference between fear, I'm gonna die, and fear of I have a vision and I'm scared, that my mind is scared of the vision. So just recognize what it is for you, what it means, like, oh, I can feel somebody behind me, like gonna attack me, versus I'm gonna speak to Amber from this loving, deep place that I don't normally speak to, and I'm scared. Two different experiences of fear. And so each person has that. If you can start to recognize that, and like, so when Renee's speaking to, what's the difference? Well, there's the spot to start. And that sage pillar, Cliff, is, can I recognize which one it is? Am I just operating out of something that the mind is saying, don't go paddle all the islands? And the fear of doing that in my mind is like, you're crazy, but yet it's not fear I'm gonna die, it's fear of, oh, excitement, and I'm looking forward to what I'm gonna experience. And Cliff really did that just for the rest of you. Very distinct difference in which one is speaking. Renee, what is that for you, of that difference? What's the one that speaks and the other one that?
Maybe the fear that represents doubt, especially self-doubt, is the fear that needs to be overcome and faced. And like, okay, if I've got that fear, that's probably pointing in the right direction.
Okay. What about the other one?
Oh, I guess the other one is more vividly apparent.
Okay.
Yeah,
Vividly apparent.
I could die now.
Yeah. Yeah. My words, my body lights up, like it is fully on fire, of like every sensation in my whole body is aware of what's happening. There's a very, like, I'm very distinctly lit up.
Yeah.
So see the difference. Go ahead.
If I don't put on the brakes, I am going to be crashing through this windshield.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. That's good. Yeah. So to see, can you start to see as you move forward, what is the difference between that vision that excites me and one that is bringing on fear, that it's a little scary to the way my world is now is going to have to change, and I'm going to move forward anyways. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we've heard from Bob Buss.
Oh,
Well, I enjoyed very much the comments that were said, and I did have something I wanted to comment on that David said, that maybe we're already living in the hereafter or in nirvana. And it struck me that, you know, taking a step is fully and completely the path, not getting to some place like nirvana, but just taking the step. And when Cliff talked about imagination of a child playing, it's just that. I mean, a child's playing is not trying to get somewhere, not trying to win. There's no rules to the play usually. It's just the pure activity of playing. And it struck me that, you know, be careful what you wish for. You might get it. Be careful what you vision, because, you know, visioning is, in Buddhist language, vidya is vision and avidya is delusion. And so, you know, the Buddha said, in order to see, pull the arrow out of your eye. And I just kept reflecting that we are, many of us, walking around with an arrow in our eye, and we already think we know. And that's kind of a problem for vision. Dogen said, to know the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to become intimate with all beings. And no trace of enlightenment remains. And that traceless enlightenment is what takes us forward. I think that's what was said by many of the commenters, that's the stillness, that's the the vision, the foresight, but it's really tricky to make sure that you're not, seeing through delusion. Our minds are so full of ourselves.
Yes.
I think Master Eckhart said, in the Godhead, there's not a trace of God.
Yes.
Tony, would you like to give a little wrap up as we approach the top of the hour here?
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, the reminder, one of my favorite sayings is a vision isn't a place to get to, it's a place to come from. And I think that's what Bob was speaking to as the child playing. He's not trying to get anywhere. He is coming from that place of that stillness, that fire that is in every one of us. And my encouragement is to let that shine and let it radiate out, and practice of what's it feel like to feel a vision daily and go live that vision today instead of waiting for it in the future. And so encouragement to all of you to do that and practice at that. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Renee. And it's been an honor with you, Cliff, to dance. Long overdue.
It's fun. Tony, how can one access your book?
You could get on Amazon.
Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, and then it's also on Audible. You can get it on. I did an
Oh, it's
audio.
on Audible.
Yes.
Oh,
So
cool. I can drive to work and listen to it.
yes, definitely.
It's a good way to prepare for work, by the way.
Yeah.
We didn't
definitely.
really get into the four characters, the monk, the sage, the samurai, and the sensei, which are in the book, and they're really developed well. I wish we'd had another hour to talk about those four characters more, but I really encourage everyone to read this book. It's super enjoyable, super fun reading, and very, very helpful. So, okay, good. We have a means by which we can get it.
Thank you, Cliff. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Renee.
I want to tell everyone about next week's topic, which is training our mind, which David Sanders, who is here right now, one of the three monk-looking people here on the screen, the one with the wearing a watch, is going to give us the little presentation at the beginning to start us off from the tradition of AI, artificial intelligence. I didn't know it had reached the status of tradition until David told me we were going to speak on that. So we'll very much look forward to that. And I do want to say that I have so much gratitude in my heart for Tony speaking with all of us today, getting us started on a fascinating conversation. I'm grateful to his parents who are here for having him so that we could all benefit by his presence in the world and how much he has to share and to teach. And I want to personally thank him because the way that he has helped me to, I would say, unlock and access my own powers of visioning. And I love what you said at the very beginning. Vision is not a place to get to, it's a place to come from. Thank you so much.